He ran a clip with Kevin Demoff from the Rams when they announced the firing of Jeff Fisher. And on the font, the lower third, that's what we call it in TV lingo, when you see the bar coming across the top of the guy's name on it and whatever their title is, he put Rams Chief Operating Officer / professional liar. And somebody snapped a screen grab of it, and it went viral. And Channel 2 has now forced him to apologize. Kind of pathetic that anybody in St. Louis has to apologize to anybody connected with the St. Louis Rams. I'm sorry. But, Charlie, good job. That was funny. I don't care who you are. So thank you for that. And we'll get to more on that in a few minutes. Right now, we are joined by Congressman John Shimkus from Illinois, who is fresh off of an airplane, and we're glad to have him. Congressman, how are you?
I'm doing great, Mark. I would have loved to have been in the studio. I just didn't know. I have a beater car driving down 70, got a coat on and gloves, and my phone. Can't talk on the phone while I'm driving. I mean, it was just a mess. So I just got home, and I'm happy to talk with you.
Well, I'm glad to have you. However, we could get you on the air. Are you home for the holiday break now?
Yeah, we are done. In fact, we finished last week, but I went back out yesterday to attend the signing of the 21st Century Cures bill, which is a big. It got pretty loaded down with a lot of stuff. Most of it we were pretty pleased with. The primary goal of the 21st Century Cures is to get new drugs and devices through the FDA process so that our constituents, our citizens, can get new drugs sooner, so that, on all these deadly diseases and issues. And then the opioid issue got attached to it, and we had also mental health issues, which are big, and I'm very supportive of reform. That got attached to it. The cancer moonshot of Vice President Biden got attached to it. So it was a big kind of celebration of that signing of that bill by the president yesterday.
Yeah, and I guess the reason I was a little confused, I saw that yesterday the House committee released its final full Benghazi report, so I assume maybe there was still some work getting done up there.
Well, there's staff there, and there's committees, and there's members around. I know one of my roommates. I got two of them who are on the Ways and Means Committee, and they're in D.C. Even though we're not voting, they're in D.C. working on the tax package and how to reform the tax code. So
okay,
it's not like we all leave. There are people coming and going, and reports do get out, but most people are gone.
Speaking of which, in terms of sitting in on these meetings and talking about what's going to happen when you guys come back into session and when President-elect Trump gets sworn in, what's the agenda look like? What have you had any input on that, and what are you hoping to get accomplished, and how quickly?
Yeah, we're actually we're very excited. I think the leadership, which is would be for us, that'd be Speaker Ryan and Kevin McCarthy, our leader, and Steve Scalise, our whip, along with on the Senate side. They're having a lot of meetings with Reince Priebus on how to get through really the first 3 weeks before the inauguration. There's a lot of stuff. Like on the Senate side, they want to have some of these hearings on confirmation of these people now. They don't want to wait. On our side, well, even on the Senate side, the biggest issue we're going to do is pass a budget so we can use a parliamentary process called budget reconciliation to start repealing and replacing parts of Obamacare.
Oh, good.
Especially those things. There were things that were put into Obamacare based upon this budgetary process, and we're just going to use the same process to undo it. And then we move right into our budget process for the year we're in, or the year we're going to get to, and that's where we're going to do tax reform. So I think there's going to be we have a very busy first 100 days, and it was told me today, really it's really a 200-day, not every day. We're going to be gone. We're going to come home to work our districts and stuff, but it's going to be we're prepared to put in a lot of days early and get moving on this, because the Senate, the real driver is the Senate schedule. So, for example, I think the administration, I was told there's 4,000 kind of federal appointed employees. 1,000 may go through the Senate. So if they want to vote on every one of them, it's a 30-hour debate on each one. Now they're not going to do that.
No,
because there's just, but they could pick out 2 or 3 just to say we're going to have full debate. You saw that, the list that's coming out of people who are getting nominated to be the Secretary of State and the Secretary, the Administrator of the EPA, and there's going to be a few of those that I think Democrats are going to cause to drag out, which makes it hard for us then to work through the regular legislative process, because as a bill becomes law, it has to clear both chambers.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So it's where our schedule. The real work is to make sure that we can get a lot of the work done, so we can clear, so that the Senate doesn't get bogged down, and they can move the bills that we pass.
Are you hearing as much belly aching in Congress as we're kind of observing from the outside from a lot of Democrats who are still in a little bit of denial over what happened back on Election Day? Do you think that's the reason that, and let me ask a separate question, do you think that's the reason that they're considering holding up a couple of these confirmations?
Well, let me take the second question first. I think they're going to hold up some of these confirmations just because of views. I mean, look at, let me take the I can't remember his name, the guy who's been named as the possible next administrator of the EPA.
Scott Pruitt.
And he's from Oklahoma, and he's been working through the process of making sure there's a cost-benefit analysis and that you don't overregulate to the harm of jobs. And the people in Oklahoma are going to say, well, he's not anti-health and the environment, but there'll be some who will say, no. I mean,
you see it coming.
There's only one good regulation, and that's a new one. And if you roll some back, obviously you're hurting health and the environment. So there'll be some that'll be pure. There'll be value-driven debates, and that's just part of the process. And you have to let those people have their say. But the other point is, I don't really take much stock into complaining or second guessing or bemoaning. The change is coming, and I don't even care about. I think, in all due respect, I think the media's got to fill airways. So what are they filling it with? They're trying to cast judgments on how good or bad. What is it? Tillerson going to be a Secretary of State?
Right.
What I would say, let him become Secretary of State, and let us judge him on the job he does. So I think a lot of us, and even my friends who are Democrats, are, they're just kind of waiting for the change, and they know it's coming. So they know it's coming.
Well, what about the change to Obamacare? How easy is that going to be? And maybe that's not the right way to put it, but a lot of people have argued that you're going to have something in place before you dismantle all of Obamacare.
Yeah, I mean, we're having great debates and discussion on that. As I said earlier, there are things we can do through the reconciliation process. That's like repeal the individual mandate, repeal the employer mandate. We can also do away with what we call the Cadillac tax. We can do away with the medical device tax. There are some things so you're already starting to dismantle portions of it. But then, I mean, there is this debate about, well, what about this quote-unquote 20 million people? Well, even in our previous bills, we have these things, high-risk pools, or allow states to form compacts. So as they have bigger numbers, that's affordable to make sure people have access to, some catastrophic coverage for them. I don't think most of us aren't worried that we're not going to be able to replace that. But a lot of us have voted to say repeal. I mean, I think if the House had its way, and I can only speak about the House, if we had an up and down total repeal as soon as we got back, I think we would pass it. But we also got to work with the Senate, and I do think there is some desire to some of my colleagues to make sure there's something in place. I will tell you, most of my constituents, they have it, but they can't afford it. So they really don't have it. They really don't have it.
Yeah, that's true. I heard it said many times that Obamacare only works if you don't, because you're right. You have to get that subsidy, or it's almost unaffordable.
It's unaffordable, and then the deductible is $7,000 to $10,000, and so people can't afford that. I mean, it's just bad. It could be, and because it's dictated policies out of D.C. instead of letting the market make choices and people really aggressively buy a policy that they can afford and they can use.
Congressman John Shimkus is our guest right now, and from the 15th District over in Illinois. Congressman, I know